people are often interested. Also, I was the lead psychologist at Cambridge Analytica. You may remember them from a few years ago, all that news. I was in the commercial team, not the political team, but I did work on some political projects after that. But no, when I was there, I didn't do anything particularly unethical, that I would say. I mean, I helped sell bottled water. I think maybe that's the most unethical thing. But I know, so I'm working with a data scientist, and there's all sorts of amazing things you can do to extract features from songs, the tempo, the speed. And so you can decipher the genre quite easily, but also you can decipher the type of personalities that it would appeal to.
Okay. What is one missed opportunity that you wished you could have a second chance at?
Yeah, being a musician, I suppose, being younger and doing something creative.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Jasravee, Conversations at the Edge with Thought Leaders. Subscribe to my channel to listen to conversations that ignite new ideas with rough and sharp edges. Hi, Patrick. So nice to have you on my show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Okay. Patrick, if I requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
Oh, I would. So my motto is mind into money. So I think that's a very concise tweet. But I would probably say, yeah, applied behavioral scientist, specializing in personalized persuasion. And so as I say, I specialize in mind into money is what I call it. So taking the science of psychology and academia and thinking about how to practically use it and apply it. So on the scientific academic side, I'm a part-time lecturer at some universities in London. I've co-authored some peer-reviewed papers on topics from price psychology to Facebook psychology to facial expressions and a few things in between. And I've published a Pearson book called Hooked about the psychology of effective comms, so how to grab attention and engage people emotionally. I've co-founded my own agency, Capuchin, where we do behavioral science projects of all sorts.
Awesome. Actually, I'm glad it was a Twitter thread.
Okay. Yeah, not much of a tweet.
Yes. Okay. So, Patrick, cute sells, yet you don't like being called Pat. So
Right.
Here there are two statements. Could you tell a little bit about both?
Yeah, so normally when I introduce myself, at least at client meetings, I say, hi, my name's Patrick, although I ask people to call me Pat because research says it makes me more likable to have a short name or a nickname. Some research found that those people are perceived as warmer and more popular, which, as you can probably tell, is where I could use the most help, I think. I don't like Pat. I don't like the way it sounds. It's too, I don't know, I just don't like it. So I prefer Patrick, actually. And then as for cute selling, as I said, I wrote a book called Hooked. And there's a number of things in there, but one of them is how do you grab people's limited attention spans? Because people are all cognitive misers. We can't pay attention to everything in the world around us. There's just too much going on. However, there are certain things that will immediately grab our attention, usually for evolutionary reasons. But you might, for example, pay attention if a big spider comes onto the table where you're working because it's scary, it could be a threat, so you'll immediately look at it. And cute things we also pay attention to because we are hardwired to look after babies. If we didn't, then we probably wouldn't really be here as a species. So if you see something baby-like, a cute puppy or a kitten, you'll pay attention to it.
Awesome. Unless we appreciate the extent of something, we don't realize how this finding changes everything in terms of how we look at marketing, consumers, segmentation, and all of it. Because, it's always perceived that, okay, we've been doing this, right? We know we have rational aspects and we have emotional aspects. Hence, advertising has rational benefits and emotional benefits. So how irrational we are, and like you refer to the evolutionary brain, if I requested you to put it in perspective for our audiences. Yeah. And if you had a plain sheet of paper, which represented the brain's entire thinking, conscious, non-conscious, unconscious, pre-conscious, subconscious, whatever it's called. And if you had to represent conscious part of thinking on that sheet of paper, how would you go about it?
Okay. Well, luckily I have a plain sheet of paper right here. And I would probably maybe this.
Oh, that dot is...
So this, out of the whole piece of paper, this dot is what we're consciously aware of in the world around us, and maybe in your own body and thoughts as well. But out of everything the brain's doing, only this much is conscious.
My God.
I mean, I suppose actually maybe a range would be better. I would say maybe it could go up to something like that. It's very hard to put a number on it, but basically most of it you're not conscious of.
So why? If you had to put a context to this, because this is shocking for a human being or even a marketer to really digest that, that it's not in your control, that, whatever you have assumed about yourself for consumers, there's a drastic shift there and there's loss of control. So if you had to put it in context in terms of the two systems of thinking and the brain, and then eventually, why this happens, the shortcuts that we determine. Could you give a context to our brain and its functioning that explains what you do?
Yes. So I think in terms of what I drew, I mean, we only have so much energy, like physical energy. We only have so much time, so much motivation to do things, to pay attention to things, and to process thought. So there's a model called the triune brain theory, which suggests that different parts of the brain evolved over time, and with those different regions develop different functions. So it's slightly old, outdated model, but generally supported. But so you have the reptilian brain responsible for things like your heart rate, reflexes, and then the mammalian brain evolved responsible for things like emotion, and then finally the human brain around the outside. Now the older parts of the brain, the more emotional ones, they've been tried and tested, so they've been around for longer, they've been kind of refined over time, they're more efficient, and they've also ensured our survival for longer, so those processes, generally speaking, are a bit more important. Whereas the human brain, the rational brain, does some great things, advanced functions, but it's quite energy intensive. It takes a lot of your energy to use it. It's quite effortful, and we try and conserve our energy as much as possible. You don't want to be cognitively, mentally tired in case a tiger jumps out from the bush and you need to be quick-witted. So we try and save our energy, physical and mental, as much as possible. And so for this reason, we just cannot process everything carefully and consciously. And there's so much information, so much choice. It's estimated we make 200 food decisions a day, or we're faced with 200 food decisions. I don't know how that number was found, but there's a lot of decisions we have every day, and we just can't think through them all rationally. So we have to kind of focus and just use it sparingly. And a nice example is what's known as the cocktail party effect. So if you imagine a very noisy cocktail and there's a cocktail party and there's 24 different conversations happening and you're talking to someone, you're listening to this one conversation. And then if you imagine your name is Bob and you hear across the room somebody go, "I don't really like Bob," you'll then pay attention to that conversation, even though you weren't consciously listening to that person in the first place. And you'll hear the whole sentence, even though Bob comes at the end, not the beginning. The takeaway being, your brain is at a very low, basic, effortless level, paying attention to everything that's around you. All of those conversations are being processed at one level. But then your very effortful, conscious attention can only go to a tiny slice of that information that's there.
Amazing, isn't it? The human brain, and we are just about figuring how it functions. amazing. So, I mean, if relatively over millions of years. So, Patrick, with this basic established, if we went to psychology and technology and look at how a person's digital footprint is, helping you figure out the personality and even predict future behavior.
Mhm.
And here, I would really like to know if the extent of information is it possible to this extent? If you've seen the movie Don't Look Up,
Mhm.
you've
Yeah.
seen,
Yes, I have.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when Peter Isherwell, the owner, Bash company owner, tells the professor,
Oh,
sorry,
right.
yeah, that we know what kind of personality
Mhm.
profile you are. You avoid
Exactly. Yeah.
pain and other things, and we know how you're going to die. You're going to die alone. And even the president eventually wants to know, how she's going to die. And they show it's true. I mean, of course, it's a satire, but so coming to reality, but this is something that our audiences would really, find very mesmerizing. If you could tell us how this works and what all we can find out.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, it's important to make the point that some evolutionary psychologists say our modern skulls house a Stone Age brain. So even though we have this amazing, very advanced, sophisticated technology, we're still driven by emotion and influenced by bias. Maybe even more so, this technology might be making us even more emotional and biased. You only have to spend 5 minutes on Twitter to realize that might be true. But as for data footprints, digital footprints, there's a huge amount that you can tell about somebody from the data they leave behind. Is quite predictive, so it's quite good. It's quite accurate. I mean, one study at least found that with their algorithm based on Facebook likes, if they have the average number of Facebook likes on a person, they can predict their personality better than can a flatmate, a family member, a colleague. The only person who knows you better is your spouse, unless the algorithm has about 300 or more of your likes. So that's one study, but generally speaking, these algorithms are predictive. They can be, and also they can be quite intimate, and they can actually predict things that are quite personal. So in the original Facebook-like study, they predicted sexuality, drug use, alcohol. There's all sorts of studies on mental health problems, like linking tweets to depression. And I actually did a proof of concept study where it was a survey, but it was anonymous and people knew what it was about. And I asked them quite innocuous media preferences, and then I asked them actually quite personal things later in the survey. For example, what type of adult content they watch. And I was able to predict the latter from the former. So you can predict quite personal things. You can really predict people's deep psyche, things they may not know about themselves. And then worryingly, that can then be used obviously to nudge and manipulate people. If you know people's deepest insecurities, prejudices, desires, those are levers that you can pull quite effectively in theory. As for predicting people's deaths, I don't think we're there yet because there's so much randomness, but we used to feel this way about the weather. We had no idea how to predict it, but the data gets more sophisticated over time. But you can certainly, I think you could have a good go at predicting someone's death and probably get it above chance in terms of predicting if they'll have cancer based on their lifestyle or if they're overweight or something. So, which you could tell from their transactions, what they buy, what vitamins they buy, how much they spend on healthcare. You could see if they buy insurance or not, might tell you if they're conscientious or not, which tells you their lifespan. So I think definitely or probably will be possible in the future, but probably not right now.
Interesting. So, before I have some, you have written so many papers and, we'll take some of those topics, but there were certain things which you talked about and, which is typically believed that it's not possible, like face shape and personality.
Yeah.
Look at two bedrooms and figure out the personality. I mean, bedrooms still, you can, but face shape and personality, I mean, that was very, very shocking. And I'd like to know more about it, because like they say, you cannot judge a book by its cover, like you yourself said. But, here we are saying that, it's possible. And then what about makeup,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, so there are many papers, and they seem to be good papers, showing that face shape is linked to personality. So, for example, somebody who has a square chin, a kind of Superman type face, they are more conscientious. Extroverted people tend to be more attractive. Agreeable people tend to have kind of rounder, more baby faces. I think there's a couple of things to say. First of all, science isn't infallible. This could be bad studies. And obviously, there are ethical things of if you can judge a book by a cover doesn't mean you should. But also, these are like group differences. So we're talking about one group versus another. You can see average differences. We're not talking about individual. So there might be an individual who has a very cute, round baby face, but that doesn't mean they're agreeable. But however, if they really like to eat sweet food and they give a lot of money to charity, etc., then you can build up this picture of, okay, well, all of these things together, they probably are agreeable. And then, I mean, as I said, it could be bad science, but it looks good to me, and it's been replicated so many times, and there's a feasible mechanism. There's famous studies with Belayev, I think, a Russian scientist, and he was breeding foxes, and he found that he was breeding them to be tame and cooperative, but they also ended up looking different as well. So there is some kind of genetic link between your behavior and your appearance, whether it's accidental or not. And also, depending on what your face is like, you probably get treated differently, and that's probably going to influence your personality as well.
And as your personality changes over the years, over life stages, it does have an impact on how your face changes, like they say. Then this whole thing of predicting behavior on the basis of 200 likes or 300 likes, which you have beautifully explained with that slice of cake analogy. So, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, the underlying principle is called thin slices. So as you said, if you saw a very thin slice of cake, you could tell quite accurately what the whole cake looks like without having to see it. And in the same way, if you see a thin slice of someone's behavior, like their Facebook profile, their Spotify plays, the picture of their bedroom, you can tell quite accurately what they're like as a person based on that thin slice. And this is because of personality traits, underlying dispositions that predict behaviors consistently across different contexts. So, for example, if somebody is open to new things, their brain is wired in a way that they like to seek out adventure, and they like picking out patterns, and they just like new experiences. They're tolerant of ambiguity, so they're okay with new, unusual things. That person will vote for liberal political candidates because they're open to new things. They will read philosophy books. They will listen to classical music. They will probably have art on the wall. They will have a big bookcase with loads of books in it. So the point being, there's this underlying trait that predicts all manner of behaviors. So if you can get a thin slice, like a digital footprint, you'll be able to tell what that person's personality is like, and therefore predict other things about them.
Patrick, am I right when I say that the beauty of this segmentation and profiling is that there is behavior backing it? So even if consumers are not aware of themselves or their tendencies, the data is picking up that they actually do that. So if it's something that is not socially acceptable, or anything that is a taboo, or they don't like to talk about it, even that one can pick up, those variables one can pick up. So it's more robust and more reliable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so is behavioral science all about behaviors ideally? At the minute, there is still an element of using surveys, because let's say you're using some data points to measure personality. Well, how do you know which ones are linked to personality? You have to measure personality somehow. But yeah, and so because they're behaviors and based on these algorithms which can predict seemingly disconnected things, so you can predict, as I say, depression from the movies someone watches. You wouldn't think they're connected, but with these algorithms, you can see actually they are. So you don't need to rely on self-report.
Yeah. When typically you've taken personality types, and we'd move to impact of music choices on emotions. And I've been in qualitative research, so whenever we were doing a media study, it was like, okay, there is some need gap being filled. They don't have this life and they want to experience it. Typically, there was a connection there. Music choices and impact on emotions, because I think you wrote a paper for Spotify around Spotify and how it's doing a great job of using artificial intelligence it understands our moods and sends us personalized recommendations and notifications. And it's the most intelligent of personalization. I mean, more than Netflix, if I would say.
Well, I will say I agree that it's very good. And so if you look up a song that you like, it's very good at them giving you new songs you've never heard of, but which you do like. It is very good. As for how it works, I don't know. It's one of these things, most tech companies, TikTok's the worst, but there's no transparency, obviously, publicly about how it actually works. But there are, actually, that's not true. There is some transparency. But it's a mystery to most of us normal people. But I know, so I'm working with a data scientist, and there's all sorts of amazing things you can do to extract features from songs, the tempo, the speed. And so you can decipher the genre quite easily, but also you can decipher the type of personalities that it would appeal to. So I don't know how it works exactly, but I assume they're extracting features to see, okay, he's listening to a song that's creative. There is a paper on it. I haven't written one, but I did reference one where they pull out these elements, not just genres, but also the mood. Is it for ambience? Is it upbeat? Is it rebellious? And I assume they then find songs which have the same features.
I mean, I quite like this kind of personalization as a layperson also, but a lot. I mean, we'll get to the ethics of it eventually. So, Patrick, secret technology insights behind TikTok engagement. Yeah. That was so amazing, that paper, because, like you said, most of us were drawn into TikTok during the COVID times, not knowing why. And we would look down upon it when others were using it. And whether you're an intellectual, whosoever you might be, if you have somehow tried it, you really found a lot of benefit in those isolating times and worrisome, uncertain times. Please share some of the insights which you found most compelling, surprising.
So TikTok, again, is a bit of a black box in terms of how it works. So I've had colleagues who've actually talked to people, at least in the UK, who work there, and they ask them, so how does the algorithm work? And they don't know. It's a mystery even to people who work there, apparently. But again, I think it extracts features. So this data scientist, again, whom I worked with, he was able to extract visual features, and then we found there are different clusters of content. So you have one that's very popular is basically muscly, shirtless men. And then you have one that's dogs. You have one that's groups of people dancing. We found about over 100 of these clusters. But essentially, TikTok gives you what you want, even subconsciously, because that's what you pay attention to and linger on and maybe interact with. But I think it's what you engage with rather than just swiping. And so it can, if you're watching something and you're engaging with it, it will pull the features from that content and again go and look for things that are similar and feed it to you.
Okay.
And then with the article, there are things that make TikTok content more effective. So Again, it's these things which grab attention and engage us emotionally. So cute puppies and kittens would work very well. Anything that's a bit surprising or weird. Often, to make you engage with the content and keep watching, they'll use curiosity. So they might say, watch this until the end. There's all sorts of these techniques that they use.
Right. Patrick, from something that you're recently working on, would you like to share any case study, any aspect of it?
I'm trying to think. It's mostly under NDA. I am working, so with this data scientist, we're doing some really cool things. As I said, matching brands to TikTok influencers based on psychology and what, for example, taking the personality of the brand and the personality of an influencer, which influencer is the best fit. And now we're using a similar thing for NFTs to see if we can find the personality profile of an NFT. How does that predict success? If the NFT sells and how much it sells for. So ultimately, hopefully, we'll be able to make some popular NFTs.
Right. Okay. So on the influencers, so how is this work going to be applied? Is it like how celebrity values were understood and then matched to brands they could endorse? Is it that, or is there more to it? And how is this different?
Exactly. It's it's a behavioral science and data science combination. So that's where it's different, is kind of matching one thing to another, but also having the psychology to explain why. So if you're able to give us a piece of content, say it's a new music track by an artist, then we can automatically analyze it and see what the psychological features are. So is it quite rebellious, or is it more happy, for example? And then we, from our database of influencers, can match it automatically to the best influencer. So, for example, a happy song, well, that best goes to this person because they're quite happy and upbeat. And this is all done automatically. We can tell how happy the influencer is by automatically analyzing their content. But then also the psychology add is that we can also say, okay, for this happy song, these are the types of content that work best. So we tend to find for happy music, it needs to have more than one person in the video, it needs to have bright colors, and it needs to have dancing. And so that tells us the brief to give to the influencer.
How this understanding gets applied to marketing messages, like you were saying, in terms of colors and in terms of content. So whether it's for engagement or it is retention or acquisition, whichever part of the customer journey, how would this understanding of segments and their motivations or their behavior, the whole gamut, how does it get applied to personalizing marketing messages? If you could share from this or any other example.
I think there's three things. One is just deciding who to focus on in the first place. So which is the most valuable of these psychological segments, and where do we find them, and how do we talk to them? So who is most likely to convert, and how do we persuade them? And then the second one is just in general the acquisition side of things. So if you're doing Facebook adverts, or even you can even do it by region, you can do billboard adverts or TV adverts. But if you understand the psychology of the different segments, then you know what messaging will resonate best with them. So if you have a segment, let's say on the west coast of America, and they're quite extroverted and creative but disorganized, then you know that the billboards in the west coast of America need to be sociable, bright colors, contrast. Use social proof or scarcity nudges, make it seem cool. So that's acquisition. So that's about bringing people in. And then there's also on that point a more kind of psychological point, regardless of the segments, about how to make messaging memorable and engaging. Put a puppy in it, that kind of thing.
And emotion, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And then the third thing is retention, where if you have a customer list, and you're able to segment your customers into the different groups, and you know the psychology of those groups, then you know for this customer, you need to send them an email with a price discount because that's what appeals to their personality. Whereas for this customer, you need to just be nice to them and have somebody reach out to them personally because they're all about, they're agreeable and they care about relationships, that kind of thing. Or even if you just send an email to everyone, it still tells you the language and imagery and colors to use in the targeted emails. And then in an ideal world, you would customize the UX for different people or the customer experience. So they log into their account, and it's a different experience for friendly people versus organized people. Hard to do because you have to create all these different experiences.
Yeah, but worth it and very profitable because I mean this is hyper personalization, so to speak.
Yeah,
I mean it can't get. I mean this is the best fit in terms of value addition for me as a customer and relevance for me, as how I perceive the marketer. So this is win-win in that sense. Would you say?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, definitely. But also probably before then, there are probably some quick wins for most companies, just things they can do for everybody that would make it a more pleasant and more persuasive experience. Famous example, I think it was maybe Amazon, but you used to have to sign in or register in order to buy something, and they got rid of that so you could do a guest checkout, and that increased their revenue by $300 million in 1 year. But as personalization is great, definitely recommended, but there are probably some simple things that can be fixed first in most cases.
So make it easy, which is that part of that we want shortcuts, and whatever is easy, we're drawn to it. The brain wants that. Avoid the
easy. Easy and attractive as well, to motivate people to do it.
Yes. So, right point to talk about your book, and I'll see if I've missed anything. But we really want to know about your book, Hooked. So, what made you write it? And we know a little bit about the puppy. We want to know more. And if you could share the framework.
Yeah. So I wanted to write a book, and I knew about this, so I wrote a book on this.
Simple.
But no, I think it's a very interesting topic, and it's also become increasingly useful how to grab people's attention, because we're kind of moving into a world. There's no more land left, so people are kind of colonizing the brain instead, and grabbing people's attention and taking up their brain space. That seems to be the new frontier, particularly with the metaverse and things. So if you can understand how to grab attention and stick into people's heads, I think it's very increasingly valuable and important. And then, so there's three parts to it. There's first of all is grabbing people's limited attention spans, because we don't have much brain space to pay attention to the world. And there's a few things you can do to do that. You can use emotion, you can use cute things and emotional words and so on. You can use faces, you can use personalization, because we pay attention to things about ourselves. And you can use surprise, of which there are two kinds. One of them is just movement and noise, and the other one is more about being creative and being a bit weird and different. So most adverts are all about showing people something they've never seen before, because we'll pay attention to that. And then the second part is engaging people and getting them to actually think about what you're saying and to digest it and make it sticky. And you can do that through curiosity, for example, puzzles, rhetorical questions, anything that makes people think about it themselves. You can do it through stories, because people empathetically experience a story. So it's like they actually feel the message rather than just reading it. And you can do it through concreteness, which is about making things visual and simple and easy to visualize and to think about in the real tangible world. And then finally, the third part is how do you frame your message to make it persuasive? And that's where things like nudging come in.
Right, right. And, Patrick, as you were speaking, I just felt that, there's one process. You must be familiar with how an advertising agency functions. There is this creative briefing process.
Yeah.
And I felt all of this should be used for that process,
I hope so.
for the creative mind, because, everybody's mind is an ignoring machine, but for them more so because they have to take it forward to create something out of it. So, okay, just something that struck me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Something that was very interesting. So 2 points that I really want to cover. One was when you put out a statement on LinkedIn, which was about the vaccine, and you said, here are how many? Six principles being used in one sentence. And then when I was noticing in the comments, people were saying, for me, I got something different and, something. So this is so interesting because, it is in the everyday little innocent message. And okay, this was for vaccine, but it is being used to that an extent. Would you like to say something about it? It's really liked. It said masterclass in nudging.
Yeah.
So power packed. Yeah. Can you have this masterclass for our audiences?
Absolutely. So they have the British government have a behavioural insights team. Or they had, that is private now allegedly, but they also have another behavioural team for the pandemic specifically. But anyway, they have really great psychological minds working on this, and they made this text to encourage people to get the COVID vaccine, and it was 19 words long, and it had 6 nudges packed into the text. So it's really, really powerful how they managed to make it so persuasive. But it said something like, you have reached the top of the queue for your free NHS COVID-19 vaccine. Mm-hmm. And so the nudges that are in there are social proof, because they're saying there's a queue, which means it's popular.
Everybody's coming for it, yes.
They said you're a priority, so they're using scarcity. So not only is it popular, but there's only so many to go around. And so that makes an urgency to get it. They have said you've reached the top of the queue, and so by saying you've reached the top, they're using commitment, so you feel invested, like you've been waiting in the queue and you don't want to lose your place. By calling it the top of the queue, they're using ego, so you feel like you're a bit special, maybe above the people below you in the queue. By giving it away for free, they're possibly using reciprocity, where you feel indebted to them and more likely to do it themselves. But also free is probably more about making it easy and reducing that friction. And then the final one is having it come from the NHS, where the health service in the UK is very much trusted and admired. And so if a message or a vaccine comes from the NHS, you're more open to it. So that's 6 at least nudges in just one short sentence. I thought it was very good.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this out and sharing. Very telling. Why is behavioral science so strong in UK? I don't know. Is this a perception? Is this because of Rory Sutherland? Because all seminars and webinars that they're kind of originating from Ogilvy Consulting, also from UK side. So is this right perception that UK has taken it very seriously, or UK has always been ahead of the curve in these kind of things?
So pretty good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose well, I'm biased. I went to UCL. I think because does that have anything to do with it? What I'm thinking about is the Tavistock Institute. So London and the UK has kind of been a centre for psychological thinking and how to influence the public for a while, for decades, going back to, I don't know, the 60s. And there are some good psychologists. Freud even moved to London up during the Second World War, and I think he stayed there.
Mm.
So it's certainly been like a bed for psychology for a while. But you're right. There's Roy Sutherland and the Behavioural Insights team. I was lucky enough to work for behavioural science consultancy there. This was 10 or so years ago. So I think London has been pioneering it for a while. I'm not sure why that is, though. It's a good question.
Okay. But you've answered it, yes. Okay. And now ethics of it, Patrick. I think it's your favorite subject since some years. Because it's the addictive aspect of it, whatever, like it's being talked about. It's something that concerns you as a parent. It concerns me. I have a teenager child, so I'm honestly worried because it's kind of something that you feel you don't have any control on. Insta and all kinds of social media, and so that's just that's just something I said. But looking at the larger picture, what would you say are the watchouts?
Well, I think for non-practitioners, the watchouts are to reduce usage as much as possible, because you can't not be influenced. Doesn't matter how intelligent and educated on this stuff you are. It's a bit like an optical illusion. Even though rationally it's an illusion, it still looks like it. In the same way, even if you know about these techniques, you're still influenced by them. It's like you could be a high-class food critic and eat McDonald's every day and say how bad it is, but you're still eating it. And so in the same way, if you're still consuming all this information, it's still influencing you in some way. So I personally have been on a personal mission of my own to use technology less and less, as much as possible. And there are also, I know it sounds corny, but there is a paper showing that people who do mindfulness are less liable to be manipulated. They're less easily influenced. So it's all about kind of exercising your rational brain a bit more. Reading is good, meditation is good, exercise is good, eating healthily is good. I know it sounds corny, but all of these things actually protect you, as does having some kind of inner core principles. So it doesn't have to be religion, but religion and faith are very good, but it's just some kind of something inside. It makes you less likely to be kind of blown around by external information. Wow.
Alternate profession could have been?
Oh, musician.
Oh, okay. What would you do on Mars for fun?
Read.
Okay. What is your most often used phrase?
Mine's into money, or my name is Pat. So I ask people to call me Pat.
A book you'd like to gift to all your friends?
Maybe my own book.
Yes. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Be sensible.
Okay. Are you censoring your spontaneous responses or something?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay. I have no response for that, so never mind. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Probably my mum pushing me in the not wheelchair. What do they call it? A pram. And me going faster.
Oh, how nice. Okay. If you were to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
Well,
Patrick?
I'm wondering whether to. No, I would do probably an addiction charity, because I've been touched by it in the past. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What is a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
Be sensible.
A sensible response. Okay. What is one missed opportunity that you wished you could have a second chance at?
Yeah, being a musician, I suppose. Being younger and doing something creative.
Okay. Lovely. Something new happening in your life right now?
I just got married. So I'm kind of settling into family life, which is nice.
Oh, awesome. Okay. This is wrap up now, Patrick. We'd request you to share your online addresses, emails, any which ways that you prefer. People can connect with you or reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, and I also have a website, patrickfagan.co.uk. Yeah, this was great, very fun and interesting. So please like, share, and subscribe. Smash that like button down below.